My name is David Langston. I'm 49 years old, and I spent most of my life on a 60-acre farm in northern Arkansas. It's the land I was raised on, the land my father raised me on, the same fields I learned to drive a tractor in at 12, and the same barn where I proposed to Melissa under a rusted tin roof and a string of hay-dusted fairy lights. We'd been married for 18 years. She used to call it our home. Turns out she meant our opportunity. 3 months ago, I had a heart attack while loading sacks of feed into the barn. Not a big one, but enough to drop me to my knees in the dirt like someone had hit the kill switch. Melissa found me. She called 911, rode in the ambulance with me, stayed the night by my hospital bed, fingers wrapped around mine like the old days. That was the first and last night she stayed. The doctors kept me under observation for nearly 2 weeks. No surgery, just stress monitoring, medication adjustments, and endless talk of lifestyle changes. Melissa visited the first 3 days. After that, she got busy. "Babe, I have to take care of the animals. You know how the pigs get when they miss feeding time," she texted one morning. Another time, "Your cousin Jess stopped by. Says you're in good hands. I'll swing by tomorrow." Tomorrow became the weekend. Then next week, Nurse Callie said, "Your wife hasn't been around in a while. Everything okay at home?" I nodded, lied. "Yeah, she's just overwhelmed." What I didn't say. She'd stopped answering my calls. She barely replied to my messages. And when she did, it was short, cold, robotic. By the second week, something in my gut started whispering. That quiet alarm you can't explain, but can't ignore either. I'd had it once before, back when a tenant tried to forge a rent receipt. I didn't confront him, just verified it quietly. Sure enough, it was fake. And now that same feeling had returned. About my own wife. So I started making mental notes. How she mentioned money out of nowhere. How much would this land even sell for? She'd asked once, sitting on the porch with coffee. "More than it's worth," I said. She laughed. "You mean more than you're worth?" It was a joke back then. Wasn't funny now. One afternoon, while the nurse stepped out, I borrowed her tablet under the pretense of checking email. Instead, I logged into my joint bank account with Melissa. There was a $7,000 withdrawal I didn't recognize. 3 days later, another one for $12,000. Each to a name I didn't know, Carver and Amp, Low Realty. I froze. Carver and Amp, Low was a small-time real estate firm in town. I'd seen their signs before, cheap wooden panels with red lettering. We'd never dealt with them. So why was our money going there? That evening, I called Melissa. No answer. Left a voicemail. "Call me." No response. I texted, "We need to talk." She replied hours later. Later. I'm exhausted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling in the dim hospital light, listening to heart monitors beep like distant warning sirens. Something was happening. I didn't know what, but I knew it wasn't good. And worst of all, I wasn't there to stop it. But I could still plan. 2 days after I saw the payments to Carver Low Realty, I was discharged from the hospital. The doctor gave me a stack of prescriptions, a gentle warning about my blood pressure, and a printed sheet titled Post-Cardiac Recovery. Do's and don'ts. There was nothing on that list about preparing for betrayal. Melissa didn't pick me up. She sent her cousin, Tyler. "Hey man," Tyler mumbled as I climbed into the passenger seat of his pickup. He didn't make eye contact, just stared ahead, fingers tapping the steering wheel like he had somewhere better to be. "Melissa busy?" I asked. He shrugged. "Something about paperwork. You know how she is." I nodded slowly. No, I didn't know how she was. Not anymore. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed the change immediately. The front porch light was gone. A fresh coat of paint on the siding. The old farm sign that used to say Langston Acres had been taken down. In its place, nothing. The house looked cleaned up, staged almost, like someone was preparing it for a showing. New paint? I asked Tyler. He cleared his throat. Guess Melissa thought it was time. I stepped out of the truck without another word. Inside the house, furniture had been rearranged. My recliner was gone. The gallery of old family photos in the hallway had been replaced by generic landscape paintings, forest trails, foggy lakes, cabins with smoke curling out of the chimney. It wasn't our home anymore. It was a listing. Melissa greeted me with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "You're back," she said. "I live here," I replied. She laughed too quickly. "Of course. I just meant, you look healthy." I didn't respond. I walked past her into the kitchen. Even that had changed. Our fridge magnets were gone. The calendar with my dad's birthday circled in red gone, replaced by a whiteboard that said, "Open house, Saturday, 2 p.m." I stared at it for a full 10 seconds. Melissa didn't say a word. Later that night, when she was asleep or pretending to be, I sat down at my old desk and opened the drawer where I kept our paperwork. Empty. Not just disorganized. Empty. The marriage certificate. The original farm deed. The folder labeled Dad's VA records. All of it gone. I didn't panic. Not right away. Instead, I walked out to the barn. Buried under the back shelf behind the hay bales, I found the lockbox. The one my father gave me when he signed the land over. Inside it, the original deed. Signed, sealed, stamped. Still in my name. That's when I knew. She hadn't sold it. Not yet. But she was trying. And she thought she could get away with it. I spent the next day doing what I do best, watching quietly. Melissa left at noon, said she had errands. I followed her, 4 cars behind in a borrowed truck from a friend at the co-op. She pulled into the parking lot of Carver Low Realty. She wasn't just selling. She was selling now. I parked across the street, heart steady, mind clearer than it had been in weeks. She walked in with a folder under her arm, heels clicking like a woman closing a deal. And maybe she was. But she didn't know 2 things. I had the original deed. I had already called a lawyer. His name was Earl Whitman, an old friend of my father's. I'd sent him a text from the hospital the day after I saw the payments. He called me back immediately. "You think she's selling the place?" "I'm almost sure." "Then don't confront her. Yet, let her keep thinking you're still recovering." "Why?" I asked. "Because if she forges anything with your name on it, that's a felony." Melissa came home late that evening. Hair curled, lipstick on. She smelled like hotel soap, not farm air. She smiled as she walked in the door like nothing was happening behind the scenes. "How was your day?" she asked casually. "Quiet," I said. "Didn't leave the house." She nodded. "That's good. You need rest." I watched her walk into the bedroom. She didn't notice the lockbox sitting just behind my feet. The next morning, I drove into town. Not in my truck, that would have been too obvious. Instead, I borrowed an old beater from Earl's son. Rusted panels, tinted windows, untraceable from a glance. I had 3 stops to make. First stop, county clerk's office. I asked to pull the title history for our property. The woman behind the desk printed it without hesitation. The last official record? Still in my name. But there was a pending transfer request. Submitted 2 days ago. Signature, David Langston. Except I hadn't signed anything. Second stop, Earl's office. I slid the title printout across his desk. "There's your proof," I said. He held it up, frowning. "That signature looks like someone traced it." They did. Then this just went from betrayal to felony. Earl grabbed a pen, wrote down 2 names. Forensic document examiner. Real estate fraud investigator. Quiet people. Discreet. They'll verify the signature and trace every filing. I nodded. "And Melissa?" "Let her keep moving," he said. "We need her to walk right into this." Third stop, home security dashboard. I'd installed motion-activated interior cameras 2 years ago. Never told Melissa. Not because I didn't trust her then, but because it was standard on all insurance policies over $500,000. I logged in. Footage was backed up. Timestamps showed Melissa meeting with someone at the house 3 times in the past week. A man, mid-30s, slender, always in a suit, always holding documents. I took screenshots, zoomed in. One of the files was clearly labeled, Preliminary Buyer Agreement. That night, she was humming while making dinner. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it, smiled faintly, and typed something quickly before putting it face down on the counter. I didn't ask, just stirred the soup and memorized the ringtone. After dinner, she brought up something new. I've been thinking maybe we could downsize. You know, less maintenance, fewer expenses. It'd be better for your health. I sipped my water slowly. You want to sell the farm? No, she said, laughing nervously. Just, maybe lease part of it, or sell a small section. Just options, that's all. She was testing the waters, seeing if I'd bite. I didn't. I just said, it's a big decision. She nodded. Right. Big. Later that night, I waited until she was asleep and quietly opened her laptop. Password was the dog's name. Classic. I found a folder on her desktop. Private. Inside were scanned forms, a forged power of attorney, a notarized signature that wasn't mine, a contract with Carver Lowe listing our entire property, house, barn, fields, livestock included, for $480,000. Way under market value. The buyer? M. Whitmore Holdings, LLC, an out-of-state shell company. They wanted quick cash deals. No inspections. No questions. Exactly the kind of client you hide things from. I copied everything onto a flash drive. Took photos of her call logs. Printed out every single page. Then I locked the originals in Earl's office vault. The next morning, I got a call from the forensic examiner. Definitely forged, he said. You sign with a rightward slant. This one's awkwardly upright. Pressure points are off. Initial loops don't match your muscle memory. How sure are you? Court admissible. 100%. Melissa was in the living room when I got off the phone. She smiled again. That same hollow smile she'd been wearing all week. I sat across from her, crossed my legs, and said, You doing anything tomorrow at 2? She blinked. Know why? Good, I said. We have guests coming. Who? Just some people who want to hear the truth. She tilted her head. David, what are you talking about? I smiled, genuinely, for the first time in weeks. You'll see. Melissa spent the entire next morning pacing around the house. She vacuumed the living room twice, rearranged a vase 3 times, changed her blouse once. Something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. What kind of guests? She asked again over breakfast. You'll see, I repeated calmly. Just a conversation. I sipped my coffee while she stared at me, trying to read something behind my tone. She wouldn't find it. That was the point. At exactly 1:58 p.m., 2 cars pulled into the driveway. Melissa peeked through the curtains. Is that a lawyer? I stood and buttoned my shirt. Yep. And the other guy? Title fraud investigator. She turned sharply. What is this, David? I looked her dead in the eyes. This is your moment to tell the truth. Or stay quiet and let someone else speak for you. She didn't respond. We sat at the dining table. Melissa on one end. Me on the other. Earl sat beside me, documents stacked neatly in front of him. The fraud investigator, a quiet man in a blue vest named Mr. Grant, set up a small recorder. This is a voluntary conversation, he said. No coercion. We're just trying to clarify discrepancies. Discrepancies? Melissa said, voice high-pitched. I don't even know what's going on. Grant slid a copy of the property transfer across the table. This document was submitted to the county clerk's office 4 days ago. It bears your husband's signature. Melissa looked down at the page, blinked, then looked up. That's his signature. Grant nodded. That's what we're trying to verify. Because the signature as confirmed by our examiner, is forged. Melissa went pale. Earl chimed in. Melissa, do you want to tell us how this document was filed? Because if not, we'll need to forward it to the sheriff and pursue this as a criminal case. I didn't file it. I mean, I might have. I don't remember everything I signed. Tyler helped me with some of the paperwork. Tyler? I asked. Your cousin? She nodded quickly. He said we could get ahead of medical bills, that the land was just sitting there. He told me it was temporary, that we could stop the sale anytime. And the forged power of attorney? Earl asked. She blinked again. I didn't forge anything. But someone did, Grant said calmly. And it wasn't David. There was a long silence. Then Melissa folded. Okay, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Tyler said we needed quick money, that he had a buyer lined up, someone who didn't ask questions. He handled the papers. I just signed where he told me. I stayed silent. Let her speak. Let her fall deeper into her own words. We thought you'd be in the hospital longer, she continued. Tyler said we could close the sale, use the money to clear the rest of our debt, and figure out later. You mean after you moved to Texas with your buyer? I asked. Her eyes widened. You left your browsing history open, I added. I know about the house hunting in Austin, the job interview at Hawthorne Dental. Your resume still lists you as single. She looked down. Grant shut off the recorder. I have enough for a report. We'll turn this over to the authorities. But if you want to cooperate now, Melissa, it might reduce charges. She said nothing, didn't nod, didn't cry, just stared at her hands. Earl gathered the papers, stood, and said to me, We'll file the injunction in the morning. Nothing else moves without your say-so. Thank you, I said quietly. He looked at Melissa. You should get ahead of this, before it gets worse. Then they both left. Melissa and I were alone again. She didn't speak, so I did. I would have forgiven a mistake, I said. I would have worked through a mistake. But this was a plan, a lie, a theft. She whispered, You were going to die. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. So that made the land yours? She didn't answer. I stood, picked up the original deed from the counter, and slid it into my jacket. Not today, Melissa. Melissa didn't say a word the rest of that night. No apology, no explanation, not even anger. She just moved through the house like a ghost. A careful, quiet ghost who knew the walls were listening. By morning, she was gone. Her car was missing from the driveway. Her side of the closet looked thinner. One of her duffel bags was gone, but she hadn't taken her phone charger, which told me one thing. She wasn't running. She was regrouping. At 10:42 a.m. I got a call from a block number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Tyler. David, hey, listen, there's been some confusion. Melissa's upset. She says people came by asking questions. We should sit down, man to man, talk this through. I played the message twice. His voice was tight, too rehearsed, like someone preparing a defense they hadn't been asked for yet. At noon, he showed up uninvited. Didn't even knock, just strutted into the kitchen like he still had home field advantage. All right, look, he said. Let's not do this the hard way. Melissa's scared. You're obviously confused. But I have paperwork proving everything was above board. Then show it to the police, I replied. He smiled like a salesman. Come on, David. You and I both know court's a mess. Delays. Lawyers. You want that? I stared at him. You forged my name. He blinked. I what? On at least 3 documents, I said. Notarized with a stamp from a woman who hasn't lived in this county for over a year. Now his smile cracked. How do you know that? He asked. I took out my phone. Press play. The voice of the forensic examiner filled the room. This is a confirmed forgery. Pressure points don't match. Stroke patterns inconsistent with Mr. Langston's handwriting profile. Tyler stepped back like I'd pulled a weapon. You bugged me? He snapped. No, I said. You did this all by yourself. I just pressed record. He looked around the kitchen like maybe he could still escape this, talk his way out, laugh it off. You're not gonna press charges, he said. Why wouldn't I? Because we're family. I raised an eyebrow. You remember that now? He tried again. I mean, nobody got hurt. It was a mistake. Melissa thought you weren't coming home. You saw me in the hospital, Tyler. He froze. You knew I was recovering. You visited. You brought coffee. You smiled in my face. And all the while, you were preparing to steal everything my father left me. He stopped smiling after that. Left the house without another word. But I wasn't done. I forwarded the voicemail and the audio recording to Earl, who immediately looped in the sheriff's office. Forgery. Attempted fraud. Conspiracy. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was a case. That evening, Melissa came home. Hair in a messy bun. Jacket zipped to the neck. She looked smaller. Not physically, but like someone who realized the spotlight had moved off her and onto the damage. She didn't ask what I'd done. She knew. I want to fix this, she said. You can't. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I nodded. But you meant for it to start. Silence. I sat her down at the kitchen table. No anger. No yelling. Just a single sheet of paper. I want you to sign this, I said. She glanced down. Her eyes scanned the title. Affidavit of Confession. Forged signature on property transfer. Her hands trembled. If you sign it, I said, I won't press additional charges. We'll let the court handle what's already been filed. But if you refuse, everything you and Tyler did goes into public record. Depositions. Courtrooms. Headlines. Melissa looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. Please don't do this. I didn't flinch. You already did. Melissa didn't sign right away. She sat at that table for 10 minutes, hands clenched around the pen like it might bite her. Tears welled up but never fell. Her mouth opened once, closed again, like she wanted to explain herself, but even she knew no excuse would land now. Eventually, without a word, she signed. Her signature shaky. Her posture collapsed. It was the first honest thing she'd done in weeks. I took the paper, placed it in a folder, and walked it straight to Earl's office. He faxed it to the county clerk, filed it with the sheriff, uploaded it to the civil court's preliminary case file. That single document killed the transfer, nullified the forged deed, and froze any future activity on the property. The land was back under my name, legally, indisputably, permanently. Melissa moved out the next day. No yelling. No last-minute apology speech. Just packed 2 bags and walked out to a waiting Uber, head down, hair tied back. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Maybe because she knew I wouldn't give it. Tyler wasn't as quiet. 3 days later, his face appeared on the front page of the Ozark Ledger. Local man charged with real estate fraud. He was smiling in the mugshot, probably still thought he'd talk his way out of it. But the article told a different story. 3 counts of forgery, 2 counts of conspiracy to defraud, pending state-level investigation. Turns out Melissa and I weren't the only ones. He'd pulled the same scheme on an elderly couple in town a year ago. Sold their land, claimed they gave verbal permission. No paperwork, no proof. They hadn't known how to fight back. I did. A week later, I walked out to the barn at sunrise. The air smelled like cut hay and wood smoke. Scout, my dog, ran ahead of me, barking at nothing. The morning sun broke through the trees and lit up the roofline of the barn I'd rebuilt with my father 10 summers ago. This was mine again, not because I fought for it, but because I prepared. I didn't make a public statement, didn't post a rant, didn't show up in court to glare across the aisle. I just cleaned the kitchen, trimmed the hedges, and started repairs on the old guest house out back. Melissa left behind some bills, a broken coffee pot, and a note that simply read, "I didn't know how to stop." I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Earl called 2 weeks later. "Settlement finalized," he said. "She forfeited all claim to the property. No spousal support. No pension access. No lien against your name." I leaned back in my chair. "Good," I said. "What about Tyler?" "Plea deal pending. But he'll serve time. At least 2 years." I thanked him and hung up, then sat in silence for a long time. Not out of sadness, not out of anger, just peace. For the first time in months, everything was still. No more watching my back. No more guessing games. Just me, the land, and the truth. A month after Melissa left, the field started to come alive again. It had rained just enough to wake the soil, and the first shoots of early spring poked through the earth like cautious visitors. I walked the property line each morning with Scout at my side, fence by fence, post by post. There was something about knowing it was truly mine again, not just on paper, but in spirit. I didn't tell many people what happened. In small towns, the story tells itself. The whispers travel faster than tractors, and truth eventually settles like dust. Folks at the feed store didn't ask, but they stopped mentioning Melissa, and no one brought up Tyler anymore. That was enough. Earl dropped off the final paperwork on a quiet Thursday. A thick envelope, neatly clipped, every page notarized, every asset sealed. He didn't say much, just handed it over and nodded once before heading back to his truck. That's how real respect sounds sometimes. No words, just silence that says, "I saw what you did." That night, I opened the envelope and laid out the papers across my kitchen table. Scout curled up nearby, one paw over his nose. There it was, the official title. My name, clean, uncontested, final. For the first time since the hospital, I exhaled like I meant it. I kept Melissa's final note. I didn't know how to stop. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder of what happens when someone crosses a line they can't walk back from. I used to think forgiveness meant letting go of anger, but that wasn't my path. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam doors. I just watched and remembered who I was raised to be. My father didn't teach me how to fight. He taught me how to endure. 6 weeks later, I sold the side parcel. 10 acres on the far west end, the section we never used. It covered every legal fee, paid off the tractor, funded a new roof for the barn, and with what was left, I bought beehives. Melissa hated bees. I smiled at that. Some days, I don't think about her at all. Other days, I remember the little betrayals, the subtle distance, the late-night errands, the erased voicemails. But they don't sting anymore. They just sit where they belong. In the past, one evening, just before dusk, I found an old photo in the barn. Me and Melissa years ago, standing in front of the tractor with dust on our boots and fake grins plastered across our faces. I didn't tear it, didn't burn it, just put it in a drawer. Because that's all it is now, a drawer memory. The farm is quiet again, not empty, not broken, just mine. And sometimes, revenge doesn't look like prison time or public shame. Sometimes it's just a man on his porch watching the fields grow, knowing no one can take it from him again.